Tassenball, another Patriot Super Bowl victory. Luke Jones joins us live via satellite from his palatial estate in Pennsylvania. I was there. You were not there. Luke, I mean, we'll never see another one like Sunday night. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
It was amazing, and it's just amazing when you think about this last calendar year, what we had with the NCAA tournament with Villanova, the NBA Finals, certainly Major League Baseball Game 7, the Cubs finally breaking their 108-year curse, what we had with the college football national championship game with Clemson winning in last-second fashion, and then to have this, a 25-point deficit erased, first overtime game in Super Bowl history, and Super Bowl number 5 for Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Just incredible. Love them or hate them. You have to tip your cap to the New England Patriots. And, in general, I know a lot of local people not happy with the outcome, but have to appreciate the history that we did witness on Sunday night.
Well, and then you have to back up, and if you're in Atlanta and you say, well, if that would have happened to us in Super Bowl 47, how would you recover from that? I don't know how the Falcons are going to recover, and certainly Matt Ryan. The one thing I would say is the unfolding of the second half and it being 28-3, and how many things had to go wrong for the Falcons. How many errors that they made in judgment, in play calling, in getting sacked, in how to manage a 25-point victory. It's disgraceful, quite frankly, I think.
Well, I think disgraceful is a little harsh, but they choked. They did. There's no doubt about that. But there's two sides to the coin. One, New England had such a small margin for error in everything that they did. They had to get two-point conversions. You just go down the list of things that had to go well for them and plays that they had to make. Everyone will remember the Julian Edelman catch when you think back to what the Giants did to them in both of their wins over the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But you do go back to Atlanta and you really say what happened. I think you can certainly point to a longer halftime. We've seen this. We've seen it happen against the Ravens so many times that Bill Belichick and his coaching staff, as much as we talk about second half adjustments, and I think 95% of the time when we talk about those in basketball or football for that matter, a lot of times it tends to be overrated. And especially in the NFL, you get a 12-minute halftime in any other circumstance. But an extended break, you do get a sense that the Patriots defense did get a better handle on stopping the Atlanta running game. That outside zone stretch that has given them a lot of trouble in the first half. They seem to manage that, and they seem to really figure things out. But, you look at the Falcons, and you can point to a lot of things that happened in that second half. But when you have the ball at the 22-yard line and, roughly, under 5 minutes to go, and you know that you're up 8, all you have to do is run it 3 times and kick a field goal to go up 2 scores again. And you're looking at even if you lose a yard or two, still a field goal that's very manageable for a good kicker.
The game's all about the clock at that point, right?
Yeah,
that's it, literally it.
It's unthinkable that you would try to pass twice. And, what happens when you try to pass? And we've talked about this a lot with Marty Morningwig this year with the Ravens and Mark Trestman before that. When you drop back to pass, your quarterback can get sacked. He can certainly throw a pick. And you're going to be in situations where a holding penalty is far more likely to occur, and that's what happened in Atlanta. So you kind of point to that sequence right there. You can point to the fumble. There are certainly other plays that occurred over the course of that game, but that spectacular catch by Julio Jones should have ended that game, barring something weird happening. And what was weird was Kyle Shanahan's play calls because you run the ball 3 times there, even if you get stuffed, gain no more yardage, you're still looking at around a 40-yard field goal, which in this day and age is a pretty decent bet.
You're looking at a 2-score game with about 2 minutes and 15 seconds left, right?
Yeah, you're looking at it. In that case, you're looking at New England having to go the length of the field and score and probably get an onside kick or something crazy for them to even have a chance to tie the game up at the end, and they didn't do that. And it's absolutely a collapse on the Atlanta side. I really look at the coaching, and let's let's not completely absolve the defense either. I mean, even though they were on the field a ton, that was a defense that played well early, but they gave up 3 touchdowns and a field goal in the second half, and that's before the ultimate game winner in overtime. So that was a defense that you and I talked about all week. Very young, had improved as the season went on, but you still looked at it statistically and said, well, that they have flaws. There's no doubt. Not very good statistically, even with that improvement. You wondered if they'd be able to do that for 60 minutes. They looked good early. Certainly, we saw Courtney Upshaw get an early sack, and they got some really good pressure with their front, and they really handled the Patriots' offensive line for close to 3 full quarters. And then New England just figured it out, and that defense got completely gassed and had no chance after that. I mean, you knew that, especially when New England got the toss for overtime, that Atlanta wasn't stopping them. It wasn't going to happen. You knew it. That game was absolutely trending in that direction. So there were a lot of things to point to. There's a lot of blame, a lot of finger pointing that you can do on the Atlanta side as far as many things that went wrong. But at the same time, you have to give credit to the New England Patriots because, even with some of those things that Atlanta did, it's not as though they exactly had a margin for error, and they did everything they needed to in the end.
Well, in the end, you knew the Patriots were capable of mounting that sort of comeback. You knew that they had that in them. I thought that one of the fascinating strategic things was the field goal with 9:44 left to go. Not a lot of coaches down 28-9 would have said, all right, I'll take 3 points here. I mean, Belichick did the math on it and said, well, we'll need 2 touchdowns and a field goal either way after they missed that extra point, right? At the end of the third quarter, that would have made it 28-10. And you said, well, they're going to kick a field goal here. Wow. Well, I mean, that's probably the way the book tells you to play it, but good luck with getting those 2 extra touchdowns and 2-point conversions on both if you kick that field goal. But Belichick had no problem kicking the field goal. He's clearly read the book, right?
Yeah, and the reality is with that, I mean, you had 4th and goal from the 15. I mean, because you do need 3 scores, I think you had, that was easier to justify. But I think you're right. There probably would have been some coaches almost acting on emotion and desperation more than just keeping their head. And
I got to get a touchdown here to feel like I'm in the game.
Yeah,
if I take a field goal, I don't feel like I'm in the game, even though the scoreboard says I am.
Yeah. So, but you can't be irrational. You can't be emotional. You can't be overly aggressive. When there's a game situation to understand. And look, kicking that field goal, making it 28-12 as opposed to being 28-9. Probably didn't do all that much if you're talking about win probability, and I haven't gone back and looked at it specifically there, but probably only moved the meter a little bit for them there. I mean, they were still in a position where 2 touchdowns and 2 2-point conversions, but 4th and 15, and it was very clear, even though New England did get some big plays and did get some chunk yardage, they don't really, if they have Rob Gronkowski, maybe 4th and goal from the 15 feels a little bit more possible, but we knew that was an offense that had to be a little more methodical, short to intermediate passing for the most part. And in that case, I said it before they did it. I think kicking the field goal was the right play there. But even so, certainly when you're trailing 28-12, at that point, just under 10 minutes to go, you're still not thinking that they're going to be able to pull it off, most likely. But again, you don't count out that brain trust that's been so good for so long, and love them or hate them, we say it all the time, they're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, and I felt that certainly applied once again on Sunday night.
Well, the one thing that would have opened the door for victory, and we talked about it all last week, were mistakes, right? I mean, you look at that Ravens-Patriot game, they made uncanny mistakes in that game to give the Ravens an opportunity to win. I feel like they did the same thing on Sunday night. The Blount fumble took points off the board for the Patriots. The Falcons capitalized, went back down the field, and then, of course, the pick six, which should have been a game changer, right? I mean, the Alfred interception should have, at 21-0, most other teams are, DOA at the 2-minute warning at halftime.
Yeah, well, and that's why, and you made mention of this. I wrote about this at WNST.net. And, at that point, they were kind of sitting where the Ravens were when Jacoby Jones ran it back 108 yards to begin the second half. I mean, you're sitting in that position where you're up 3 scores and you're feeling great. And, you said it. New England made mistakes. I mean, for as much as we're talking about Tom Brady now after what he did in that second half, which was just incredible. He had a really lousy first half, and the pressure really got to him. And I mentioned Upshaw with the sack, and certainly Atlanta
Brady
got a lot of pressure. But New England looked very unpatriot-like in that first half, and well, they were trailing 21-3, and then 28-3 soon thereafter, early in the third quarter. So I mean, it's just Atlanta had their chances. I mean, they did. I mean, they had it. Again, like I saw some statistic. The win probability for them was up around 99% multiple times over the third quarter into the fourth.
Well, at what point when it's 28-3 and there's 16, 17 minutes left to go in the game? I mean,
oh yeah,
we'll never see this again. Not in a Super Bowl anyway.
Right.
I mean, Brady has done everything in a Super Bowl except rally back from 3.5 touchdowns down, and now he's done that.
Yeah, and what the biggest deficit prior to that in the Super Bowl had been 10 points. I mean, that's just something we haven't seen very often. Like we said, the Ravens came really close to being in that kind of a predicament where they were 5 yards away from squandering what was a 22-point lead. So
I saw a number. There's only been 7 times in the history of the NFL a team has come back from 25 points down in the second half like that. I mean, is that? I mean, it feels like there are comebacks all the time, but not from 28-3. That doesn't in the second half. That doesn't happen often. I saw that number, and I'm just trying to think of like Raven history, or obviously that Oilers-Bills game was one of those games, and there have been a couple of other noteworthy. But you feel like even in garbage time during a regular season game, usually in garbage time, it's a team like the Patriots beating up a team like the Browns 28-3, and they never lose that kind of game in the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely rare. I mean, you get to that 25-point threshold, I mean, that's 4 scores. I mean, even if you're talking 3 touchdowns and 3 two-pointers, you're still a point shy. You need to score 4 times and prevent the opposition from scoring at all. And that's New England was able to do it amazingly. I mean, it's something that hasn't happened often. It's the greatest comeback in playoff history, and I realize the Bills coming back against Houston was a greater deficit, but that was the wild card round. I mean, this was the Super Bowl. I mean, there's nothing that really compares to it in terms of anything we've seen in the NFL. I mean, I'm trying to think. A lot of people were throwing out, Cleveland squandering a 3-1 series lead to the Cubs, and certainly Golden State against Cleveland in the NBA Finals. But even those, you still have the isolated event of just winning a game.
Well, like the Leyritz home run, that wouldn't have iced. That was only Game 5 of that series, but they were up 6-0.
Yeah.
And had a 2-1 lead. It would have been something if it was a 3-1 lead, right? If that would have closed them out, and then they would have, if they would have blown a 6-0 lead in the ultimate game. I would say that Royal comeback was in one game a couple of years ago in the wild card game where they came back from the huge deficit when they played the Orioles. But I'm trying to think of one-game scenarios where the lead was this significant, where the stakes were this high. This will never be done again, Luke.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking just in totality. The magnitude of this feels, even though it's different because it occurred over multiple games, feels a lot like Boston coming back down 3-0 to the Yankees. And remember Dave Roberts with steal and against Rivera. I mean, you're in that.
That's the greatest example I've heard. That's close.
Yeah, I mean I saw that. Someone had that on SportsCenter or one of the post-game shows, just kind of talking about great comebacks. But that's the kind of position the Red Sox were in, and They tie it up against Mariano Rivera, and Ortiz hits a home run in the 11th or the 12th, I think it was, and
they make movies about that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah. But this, as far as being a single game kind of situation, I mean, it's just incredible. Again, a 25-point lead, even if you fall behind by 25, say early in the second quarter, and it's like a weird college football scenario, you still think, okay, well, there's still a lot of game to maneuver. This was so late that this comeback occurred. I mean, it really is remarkable. And again, I get it. We all hate the Patriots. I'm not fond of them whatsoever, but at the same time, I can appreciate history occurring. And when you just think about how great the finishes were in the sports world over this last calendar year, I mean, this was just a nice exclamation point on that as far as drama goes, even if we didn't like the final result.
Yeah, we could check back. Alabama still lost too, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just just amazing. And for the Falcons, a team that I think has so much going for it as far as their roster, as far as where they're trending, their youth, it is really difficult to try to recover from this. And we talk about this all the time with Super Bowl hangovers. We talk about the winners a lot, but the losers more so seem to have so much difficulty.
Hey, man, look at the
recovering.
San Francisco 49ers. 4 plays at the 1-yard line, and look at where that franchise is now, 4 years later. Now, I'm not saying that that's the way it's going to go down for Dan Quinn or Matt Ryan or whatever, but it's hard to get there. We all know that. I mean, all of us with our nose pressed up against the glass last week watching the Patriots make it look easy. It's hard to get back there. And for the Falcons, when they go back and they look at how many plays they ran versus how many plays the Patriots ran, I mean, it's insane how much the Patriots controlled the ball in the second half.
Yeah, well, but to be honest, go back and look at the first half even. That deficit was pretty skewed even then when they had built the big lead. I mean, it just, it was a weird game. There were some game circumstances that led to that. But then in the second half, it was just very clear. Atlanta's offense, when they did run the ball, they weren't running nearly as effectively as they did in the first half. They couldn't sustain drives. New England got some stops. You give them credit. And then, with the Patriots, I mean, they just, they couldn't run the ball, but they used James White so effectively out of the backfield. I mean, it's something that's not being talked about because Brady threw for almost 500 yards, but James White as a running back, he was targeted 16 times and had 14 catches for 110 yards. I mean, as much as we talk about, as much as we talk about scenarios where a passing game can be, an extended handoff, that really worked for them.
I don't know that anybody would have looked and said James White's going to be the star of their offense on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I mean, this is a guy who was a backup in high school. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but, he backed up Monte Ball at Wisconsin. I mean, this was a guy that was kind of, he was in between Ball and I guess Melvin Gordon. He just amazing to think. A guy who was a late-round pick and just not really heralded whatsoever, and he came up so big for them. It just amazing to see that. And there's another situation where the Patriots, they find value in players that, frankly, other teams probably wouldn't find. And certainly he was big for them. And their final rushing totals looked okay, but I think what he was able to do out of the backfield was just so dynamic for them. And just, that was a major difference in this football game.
One more parade in Boston I won't be watching, Luke, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. You just, at some point you expect it to end, and it will end at some point. But, you see what they did this year, and we talked about this throughout the season, trying to figure out if there was truly a real threat to the Patriots. And who knows? Maybe if Derek Carr never gets hurt, maybe the Raiders surprise everyone. I'm guessing not, but maybe they would have. But, everyone talked about, Pittsburgh maybe being that, and the Steelers got on a run. But we saw what happened in the AFC Championship to them. I mean, it's just, and look, the Falcons were good enough to get up by 25 points over New England. So it's not as though they were scrubs, but it's just amazing how much of it's on the level and not. I mean, we've talked about that. We'll continue to talk about that. But there's no disputing that they're great. There might be some nefarious things that you consider that soils their reputation in the eyes of many. But, bad teams don't cheat and become great teams as a result. That's not the way it works. So you still have to acknowledge how amazing it is. And, in the case of Tom Brady, I said this last week, and I think he solidified his standing as the greatest of all time, at least in the Super Bowl era. Certainly, you go back to the days of Otto Graham and Johnny Unitas and players of that era, that it was such a different game. But what they've been able to do over the last 15 years in the salary cap era, and we know the salary cap is designed to have parity, designed to basically prevent teams from having dynasties that can sustain winning.
It's even there to help the Browns.
Yeah. And they've managed to continue to do it. And, it's funny, I was even in a discussion late Sunday night with a friend talking about, Brady and, is it more him, is it more Belichick? The reality is, it's not mutually exclusive. They're both great. You can make a very strong argument. They're both the greatest of all time at their respective roles, and I don't think Belichick would be nearly the great and successful coach that he's been if Brady never comes along. And on the flip side, if Tom Brady had wound up elsewhere, not saying he wouldn't be a Hall of Famer, not saying he wouldn't have become an all-time great, because we don't know that, but I do feel confident in saying I don't believe we'd be talking about him in the context of winning 5 Super Bowls, because I think what Belichick has built there from a coaching standpoint, we say it all the time, they're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Sometimes whether cheating or not,
I'm sure they cheated. It'll come out. It'll come out later.
But it's just they both have been. That has been a perfect marriage. We talked about it way back when with Montana, with Walsh. It's hard to find greatness in isolation. I think when we think of true greatness, you acknowledge that there were others around you that helped you out, and certainly those two go hand in hand, as well as any coach-player combination that you can find in professional sports.
Had a good time last week in Houston, right up until like the fourth quarter started. Not till the game started, till the fourth. It was fun right on up till the start of the fourth quarter. It's a hell of a week.
Was. And like I said, I get it. No one wants the Patriots. Everyone's tired of the Patriots outside of New England. I think even New England's probably tired of it in the sense that they take it for granted at this point. But it was special getting to watch history. You see that kind of a comeback. It was that was something else. There's no doubt.
All it made me think of was the Ravens and how things could have easily been very. I know we exhaled when the Ravens, had that fourth down play, because we were pretty sure at that moment we were going to blow the game and we were going to blow the Super Bowl. The Ravens got off lucky, and 4 years later we're still talking about parades and Jacoby Jones and Ray Lewis and all that. That's how quickly it gets snuffed out for everyone with the Atlanta Falcons, including guys like Dwight Freeney, who were sort of trying to get one more cup before they left.
Yeah, you just think about the Ravens. As I wrote at WNST.net, it's easy to remember the images of Joe Flacco raising the Lombardi for the first time, and Ray Lewis finishing off the last ride at the pinnacle, going out on top, and Ed Reed finally getting it. But just think about it. Either a flag's thrown on Jimmy Smith, matched up against Michael Crabtree on 4th and goal from the 5, and San Francisco has 1st and goal from the 1 yard line, and you're thinking there that there's almost zero chance that they're going to be able to stop them. Or, and I think this is where I always fell a little bit more, was San Francisco had actually remembered that Frank Gore was gashing the Ravens front without Haloti Ngata in the final quarter and a half or so, and yet he didn't touch the ball over those final 4 plays. So we're reminded all the time, and I think Sunday was a perfect example. That razor-thin margin between triumph and despair, that Sunday was a perfect example of that. And the Ravens easily could have been fighting the narrative and being the butt of the jokes that the Atlanta Falcons are going to be now and for the days to come.
He is Luke Jones. You can follow his journey at Baltimore. Luke out on Twitter, as well as Luke at WNST.net. Got a chance to watch a little basketball on Saturday with the Terps falling very, very late to Purdue. We'll be watching the Terps all week, the Caps, the Wizards, and more. I am setting sail later on this week. There'll be a week of rock and roll, as well as some of our greatest hits coming up later on in the month as well. But you can find Luke out at WNST.net in my absence. Luke, nice work in Houston last week, man. It really was a lot of fun, and then the Patriots won.
Yeah, it was. It was a great week. Caught up with some old friends, Matt Burke, Torrey Smith, some current Ravens, Brandon Williams, many celebrities. It was a fun week. I thought Houston did a fantastic job hosting the Super Bowl, from not just treating the media well, but certainly plenty to do for fans. And hey, got some history regardless of the outcome. Pretty special Super Bowl that no one's going to forget anytime soon.
I've already forgotten about it, Luke. You can find him, Luke, at WNST.net. Anything you miss here, you can find in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day. Our morning newspaper is going to ship to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. It's still $10 a month there. And last but never least, if there's any breaking news, the Orioles bring back Robert Andino, you'll get a text on the WNST text service. That's all brought to you by Coonsford of Security Boulevard. Boulevard. And Dennis will be here this Thursday, next Thursday, and every Thursday, driving you home and getting you ready for the weekend of sports. Going into a little bit of a downtime. Going to have some great stuff on the radio, certainly some great stuff out on the website. And you can follow along live on Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am a very available individual. Toss me an email, nasty@WNST.net. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.